Alright, so what we're going to do is this Philodendron ligulatum variety heraclioanum began to open this inflorescence last night. For whatever reason, most philodendrons are receptive at night, but it was probably 11 o'clock and it had only just started to open. So as you can see now, it is female receptive now during the day, which is kind of unusual for philodendrons. So what we're going to do is we're going to cross-pollinate this with Philodendron radiatum, who is this guy back here. So this is going to be the dad. And so you actually can see there is an inflorescence open that was receptive, that was female receptive last night. Now tonight it will release pollen, so I could potentially try to catch the pollen that's fresh from here now and pollinate that one tonight, but with how that is kind of receptive now, I don't want to push it and wait for tonight for fresh pollen and then that not be receptive anymore. So what I had done is I had collected pollen last week on the 21st, so it was exactly a week ago. I collected fresh pollen from this radiatum here, which I have stored. I kept it refrigerated. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove the lower section of the spathe here to reveal the female flowers underneath. And it is really sticky, which just kind of proves that it's female receptive. So each of these individual little nodules is an individual flower. So that's why we call this an inflorescence, because an inflorescence is basically an aggregate created and made up of a bunch of different individual flowers. So we're going to take, I have either like makeup applicators or paintbrushes. So I am going to take a paintbrush, I think, this time. Work. And we're going to take some of this pollen. And begin applying it. I don't want to lose any. Basically, the goal is to cover as many of these flowers as possible. Keep in mind that, I mean, this here, even just in this one clump that's on the tip of this paintbrush, is probably hundreds of individual pollen grains. So it doesn't look like a whole lot, but literally all you need, like most fertilization, is just one pollen grain for fertilization to be a success. So we just need to try to get one on each of these. And so I had last week, when I collected the pollen from the pollen from the mature radiatum over there, there was a female receptive on here as well, which you can see on this guy, that I had removed the spathe and done the same thing. And so from what I can tell, you can see how the tips of each of these female flowers is kind of dotted in black. What that means is I believe that pollination was successful, and so it's kind of closed itself off, so it can't accept anymore. So I do feel pretty confident that I had successfully pollinated this inflorescence here with male pollen from that radiatum. So This hybrid will be the first of its kind that I can tell from doing my research online. It's really cool because the mature radiatum behind me is highly lobed, really large leaves that is a viner type, and this philodendron here, ligulatum, is a terrestrial creeper, has really long strap-like leaves, and the petioles are also super frilly and ribbed like this. As well, the backs of the leaves have this really neat red coloring, so considering estimating each of these here, I would say on this entire inflorescence there's probably 50 or 60 flowers that then would develop to become fruit that then would have seeds inside of them. Even if each berry only has one seed, we're looking at potentially 60 seedlings, which sexual genetic variation would create all different types of hybrids. So it's really cool to think of the different possibilities that we could get from crossing both of these and just the different traits that they could each have. So I'm going to, you can see there's a bunch of inflorescences still waiting to develop, so this probably has a couple more days until it opens. This one here is probably another week or two. This one's probably another 5 or 6 days. So it is, if we just keep trying to cross and get as many seedlings as possible, it's really exciting to think that we could be creating a new philodendron right now that doesn't yet exist in the world.
Yeah, that is insane. That was just a big mystery, like what it could turn into. Just painting life. Exactly.
And so it was really cool last night at about 8 p.m. The inflorescence that you just saw that's currently open on the radiatum behind me, at its peak, female sexual anthesis was producing heat. So it's known as thermogenesis. So actually this top male part will, amazing chemical reaction that happens that it actually generates heat. So I was able to feel it, and it feels warm, like a heat pack almost. And it's so bizarre to like realize that it's a living being and it's a plant, and like how many plants do you feel that feel hot even though it's only 75 degrees in here. So it was really cool to actually be able to feel the heat of that one. Philodendrons and a lot of plants that go through thermogenesis do that as a means to attract pollinators. So philodendrons a lot of the times are pollinated by beetles, and beetles are attracted to both pheromones but also heat. That if we were able to see, you know, infrared would show up as a different color in their vision. So they'd be able to fly through the jungle and see these inflorescences kind of showing the heat, and they'd be drawn to it, and then that would then bring them and cause them to, you know, pollinate the philodendron inflorescence, which is like so cool. Naturally, the space that I had just removed here, obviously in nature wouldn't be removed. So what happens is, because it's in female anthesis now, this reflexed and this kind of poked out, and it opened up this bottom chamber a little bit. And then the top part, which tonight, once it becomes male receptive and gives off pollen, will bend even more, and it'll start to leak resin and then drop pollen. And then what would happen is after that it would pull itself back in, and if it had been pollinated, this entire thing will close back up to then protect those seeds or those berries that are now forming kind of in this neat little chamber, to keep it away from any hungry insects or anything like that as they develop. Think of it, you know, like a womb. Basically it forms this kind of plant womb so that the babies can develop. And then what will happen, like we'll see here, is that because this has now been pollinated successfully, eventually this top part will fall off, and then this bottom part, as the berries develop, will swell and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they will eventually ripen and turn a different color, and then at that point the berries will be ready to harvest, and we will collect them and sow them and germinate them and have babies.